What's good, everyone? I'm Zayas, and today I'm reviewing Oshi no Ko by Mengo Yokoyori and Akasaka. Oshi no Ko has been one of the most popular series in manga in the last couple of years, and that popularity is only growing now with the new anime adaptation. I've mentioned Akasaka before in my Kaguya review, alongside with my top 10 list, link somewhere up there. And personally, I just felt like the quality towards the end of Kaguya really just wasn't there, and that he kind of dropped the ball a little bit. The series may have just gotten worse because he was burnt out from all these tight deadlines when drawing manga, and this is probably why he's now switching to only writing series, teaming up with Mengo Yokoyori for the artwork for this series. He's also teaming up with this Pixiv artist slash VTuber for Renai Daiko, the other series that basically just started right now. Yokoyori has drawn erotica for most of her career. Her popular works are like Scum's Wish alongside a few others, and I just can't get behind the story in any of these series, which is why I didn't really like them. But the artwork is fine and she's drawing, so story-wise this really picks up where Kaguya left off. It's trying to be dark and serious, but it just comes off as cheap and melodramatic. The problem here really isn't the idea of the series, it's more so the execution. If you look at this series conceptually, it shares a lot of ideas with Perfect Blue, looking at like the darker part of idol culture, but this series is no Perfect Blue. It's hard to take this series seriously because of how obtuse it is at times. Ai's death is supposed to be this huge deal, which kind of like, is the crux of this series and kicks everything off, but there's very little grieving after Ai's death, and not even much mention of it until about 60 chapters in. To make things even worse, the literal next panel after I died is Ruby and Aqua going online and arguing with people on Twitter about her death, which just seems ridiculous to me. Like, my mom died, I'm not gonna be sad, I'm not gonna be grieving, I'm gonna be on Twitter arguing with all these idiots. And that's not the only time in this series where this happens. There's other moments like Akane's suicide attempt, and just like when Aqua and Ruby are like plotting and planning in general, where the series just really feels hollow, it feels manufactured, a bit tacky. It just feels like they're bringing up all these things to be like, guys, look at how crazy our story is, but they don't really address anything important in these topics, really get deep into it at all. This suicide attempt in particular just felt like they completely overlooked the whole mental health aspect of it and just blamed the internet entirely. And once they got the internet to stop bad-mouthing her, all of a sudden she's completely fine and there was no problem to begin with. There are a couple things about the story that I liked, but it's mostly overshadowed by the bad. There's some obvious foreshadowing from the very start, and it keeps things interesting because you have these little things in the back of your head that you know are going to happen. This is no Urasawa work though, and sometimes there's even parallels that are so obvious that it feels cheesy. This series really loses the plot very early on in this series. It veers away from being this drama, story, kind of mystery thing, and transforms into this informational story about actors and idols. All story, all character development, everything about this series is kind of just put on the back burner so we can learn fun facts and cool tidbits about idols. And this isn't like some like crazy information that you're only going to find in this series. Like 80% of this is basically just common sense, and the other 20% you could probably have found with a quick Google search. I found it ridiculous, it was awful, and to make things even worse, it takes until chapter 80 for them to really get back to the main storyline and address anything at all. This series is also very dialogue heavy, but the dialogue is pretty bad. Characters will monologue frequently, and they almost talk about the series as if they are a narrator, which just makes them feel like they're not even part of the series. Characters say wild things too, like when Akane tries to commit suicide, instead of checking on her and, asking if she's alright like a normal human being would, they start to monologue on about, her future and just random things about her. It just feels weird. This does have some very questionable lines. I remember the one that I cringed at the most was, he's not an actor that can be dealt with lightly. Like, what does that even mean, dude? Like, you're acting, you're not trying to be in a competition with some random dude. Like, calm down a little bit. Don't just randomly start shit with your coworkers for fun. The art is actually pretty decent. I do feel as if the character designs could be better because they feel pretty bland and generic. The only unique part about the character designs is that sometimes these characters will get stars in their eyes whenever they're lying or they're feeling a certain type of emotion, but to me this feels more like kind of a gimmick than anything else. The backgrounds do look a little bit better. Just in terms of detail, there's been a lot of effort being put into these, but I would say the whole aesthetic of the series just doesn't stand out too much. You're never gonna look back at this and be like, wow, that was a really good art. There is some solid comedy. It's very reminiscent of Kaguya-sama, but it's so rare in this series that it might as well just be a non-factor. Characters don't help this series case at all. Aqua gets the most time on screen by far, and he still feels criminally underdeveloped. When he does get some character moments, it's either him acting like a savior and helping people out, or it's him acting psychotic and kind of like a lunatic. I think it's very likely that Aqua and Ruby probably inherited some of these crazy traits from their father, but I still think it's really weird when characters just start acting deranged for no reason at all. All the plotting, scheming, planning that these guys do almost reminds me of like a middle schooler, to be honest. Some of the early parts of this series really just do feel pointless. Like, he was a doctor for his entire life, but now that he's reincarnated, he's like a completely different person, and they just gave him an entirely new personality. Ruby is just a worse version of her brother. She's annoying normally as well, and she also has the psychotic outbursts that he has. Her entire personality is just about being upbeat and cheerful, but in a way that feels forced and annoying. Kana and Akane really just feel as if they're in the story for the sake of the plot. Kana does have a little more personality than Akane, but both are pretty easy to forget. No other character has enough screen time to even be worth mentioning, so yeah, after 120 chapters, you get 4 characters, and they don't have that much personality. The romance wasn't particularly compelling to me because of how bare bones the characters felt. I do like where the last arc is headed. They're finally back talking about the story and the mystery, which I enjoyed, but in terms of character and dialogue, I don't really see the series improving on that at all, so at best it'll probably just be okay. I'm feeling a strong 3. Thank you everyone for watching. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever. I will be doing probably Skip the Loafer and maybe Kanojo Mo Kanojo next, so we will see. See you in the next one.